Translator, Reverie. Editor, Kurisu. No, no! Feng Yan shrieked hoarsely. He did not wish to die. He absolutely could not perish here and now. He bore within him the bloodline of a divine beast, and in days to come he had the chance to ascend into the ranks of shattering void-tier elites. Moreover, the vendetta for his brother's death and the humiliation of losing his own leg had yet to be avenged. Was he truly to fall beneath his enemy's hand before settling these hatreds? Unwilling. He was utterly unwilling. That's right. Cling to that resentment, Ling Han said coldly. When you slaughtered and maimed others without restraint, did you ever spare a thought for how those you trampled beneath your feet felt? The principle is simple. Treat others as you would be treated. There will always be someone capable of delivering retribution. And you, unfortunately, encountered me. In your next life, try being a decent man. No, on second thought, with the sins you've piled up in this life, you still wish to be human? Better to be reborn a pig and be slaughtered, to repay your debts in flesh and blood. Ling Han's foot came crashing down. With a brutal stomp, Feng Yan's entire head was driven into the mire. His four limbs spasmed briefly, twitching like a dying insect, and then slowly went limp. There was no doubt. He was dead beyond all doubt. Ling Han! Ling Han! Shishun roared toward the heavens, his fury surging like a tidal wave. His rage had reached its utmost limit. If you've got the guts, come down here. This lord will battle you for 300 rounds. Ling Han shouted in challenge. Shihei would never dare accept. Should he charge forward, he would only be crushed beneath the oppressive might of the god's skeletal remains. Ling Han threw his head back and laughed. If you won't come, then this lord will be on his way. But you'd best consider carefully. If you dare pursue me, you may well lose your lives. He strode forward and waved his hand, storing the god's skeletal remains into the Black Tower. Yet the instant he made contact, a ruthless shock of divine intent rammed into his consciousness, nearly forcing him to cough up blood. He could move freely beneath the godly pressure, but touching the skeletal remains themselves was an entirely different matter. With immense effort, Ling Han endured the assault, not allowing even the slightest trace of weakness to show upon his face. If you wish to chase this lord, then come. His gaze shifted toward Ao Feng, who had just regained consciousness. Don't you dare die. Your life is reserved for my father to claim. Otherwise, he will be left with regret. Ao Feng longed to raise his middle finger at Ling Han, yet cold sweat drenched his body. He was utterly drained of strength and could not even lift a hand. Ling Han descended the mountain in broad strides. High above, 9 divine senses locked onto him without pause. 8 brimming with killing intent, and 1 carrying a faint thread of goodwill. That one was undoubtedly the Yu family's elder. Indeed, the more formidable Ling Han proved himself to be, the more pleased that elder would feel. After all, Ling Han was of their bloodline, even if he did not bear the Yu surname. As for the other 8 spiritual infant tears, none made a move, likely wary of the god's skeletal remains. Perhaps they awaited a single careless lapse from Ling Han, ready to strike with a fatal ambush. Furthermore, should a heaven-grade alchemist perish within the grounds of the Winter Moon sect, the consequences would be troublesome beyond measure. Naturally, they intended to wait until he was farther away before acting. Ling Han! Ling Han! Yu Kai Yu hurried over in great haste. Upon leaving the Mystery Realm, he had returned directly to the Winter Moon sect, thus arriving several days ahead of Ling Han. Brother Ye, Ling Han laughed. Master Han, bah. Yukai Yu rushed up and seized Ling Han by the collar, hoisting him into the air. You scoundrel. You clearly knew I was your older cousin, yet you still made me address you as Master Han. Master Han! Let my aunt come out and judge what's right and wrong. Ling Han burst into laughter. Cousin, do you recall that we once made a wager? You still owe me something. When did we ever make such a bet? Yukai Yu asked, bewildered. Ling Han casually tossed an identity token toward him. Han Lin! Yukai Yu caught the token and at last realized that Han Lin was none other than Ling Han himself. Back when they entered Duanzhengji's old hideout, Ling Han had wagered with him on whether he could eliminate that many corpse soldiers within a limited time, and Yukai Yu had plainly lost. So this fellow had already planned everything. You're far too cunning, Yukai Yu exclaimed, Only now did he understand why Han Lin had so generously gifted him restore spirit pills, almost like a fool scattering treasures. With the truth laid bare, he found himself too embarrassed to reproach Ling Han. After all, he had accepted those gifts. How could he not be biased now? Ling Han laughed loudly. I'll visit you in the future. For now, head back first. I fear those old bastards may suddenly strike and drag you into it. Can you withstand it? Yu Kaiyu asked solemnly. No problem, Ling Han replied, brimming with confidence. Yu Kaiyu nodded. They had fought side by side within the 12-heaven mystery realm, and his trust in Ling Han ran deep. If Ling Han declared there was no issue, then there would indeed be none. Very well. Remember to come visit me with my aunt and uncle, he reminded once more. Understood, understood. Why are you nagging like an old woman? Ling Han waved him off. You're the old woman. Yu Kaiyu shot back, turning to depart while continuing to wave at Ling Han. Ling Han waved in return, then turned and strode away. His spiritual awareness was heightened to its utmost limit. At the slightest rustle of leaves, he would immediately retreat into the Black Tower. He no longer cared what others thought. Since news of the god's treasure trove had already spread, even shattering void-tier elites might move against him. There was truly nothing left to fear. After all, had not someone previously opened the Sagittarius Palace? Why else would the key have ended up in the Zhang family's possession? Clearly, that individual had been slaughtered. After half a day's journey, he was far from the Winter Moon sect. Presumably, the 8 figures trailing him would soon make their move. Ling Han smiled faintly and suddenly leapt high into a vast, surging river. With a loud putong, water splashed in every direction, but he did not resurface, instead slipping directly into the Black Tower. Shoo! 9 figures descended from the sky. Astonishment spread across their faces, for Ling Han's presence had vanished entirely. Only one elder showed a trace of joy amid his shock. That was unmistakably the Yu family's elder. How could he possibly vanish? Shi He Shun bellowed in fury. This boy must possess some special method to conceal his aura and tracks, the Ao family's elder surmised, his gaze filled with murderous intent. His most promising descendant, Ao Feng, who had stood the greatest chance of advancing to the spiritual infant tier, had his spirit base crippled. Search separately. The 9 immediately split apart. The Yu family's elder clearly had other intentions. If he were to encounter Ling Han, not only would he refrain from seizing him, he would instead devise a way to spirit him away. Yet none of them knew that the Black Tower had shrunk into a speck, drifting with the surging current, racing ever farther away. This river would ultimately flow into the sea, the very outlet of the desolate north. Ling Han paid it no further mind. Within the Black Tower he reunited with his mother. Son! The moment Yue Hongchang beheld Ling Han, the tears she had only just stemmed burst forth anew, streaming down her face as she rushed forward and embraced him, unwilling to release him. She had waited 18 long years, believing there would be no reunion in this lifetime. Yet heaven had not been utterly merciless, and at last she beheld her son again. Ling Han's heart, too, surged with emotion. In this life, he had finally regained both father and mother. Editor Kurisu. The mother and son conversed for a long, long while, their voices weaving through the air like threads of fate reunited. It was mostly Yue Hongchang who asked how he had passed those many years, her eyes never leaving her son's face. Ling Han naturally spoke of the fortunate and concealed the perilous, recounting triumphs while burying hardship in silence. When she learned that her son had already ascended to become a heaven-grade alchemist, Yu Hongchang was so stunned that words deserted her entirely. No wonder Ao Feng and the others addressed him respectfully as Master Ling, so it turned out her son had already carved out such astonishing accomplishments beneath the heavens. After speaking for half a day, Ling Han said, "Mother, allow me to introduce you to some people." He guided Yue Hongchang over to Lu Yutong and the others. "It is our honor to greet Mistress." Kan Ye, Zhu Wujiu, and Guang Yuan knelt upon one knee in formal salute, while the 3 young women sweetly addressed her as Auntie. Hu Niu, somewhat bewildered, stood to the side, gnawing on her finger. Joy immediately blossomed across Yu Hongchang's face, impossible to conceal. These 3 girls were each charming in their own way. And Jushuan in particular possessed a beauty so breathtaking that even she, as a woman, could not help but feel moved. Her son truly had fortune on his side to encounter such exquisite companions. The three girls very clearly sought to ingratiate themselves on purpose. This was their future mother-in-law. If Linghan himself remained unmoved, so long as they captured the mother-in-law's heart, would there still be cause to fear failing to enter the Ling family as wives? "Son, is this your daughter?" When her gaze fell upon Hu Nu, Yu Hongchang was involuntarily left dumbfounded. Her son was still so young in her eyes, and yet he already had such a big daughter? Hu Nu planted her hands on her hips and declared with utter seriousness, "Of course not. Nu is Linghan's wife." Yue Hongchang was rendered speechless. This girl was only so little, yet she proclaimed she wished to become her son's wife. How many years would her son have to wait? And how long would she herself have to wait before she could cradle a grandson in her arms? Yet this little girl was truly adorable, delicate and lovely. Once grown, her appearance would likely not be inferior to Jushuan-er's. "Hey, take the grown ones and keep the small one." Sooner or later, all would belong to the Ling family. If Ling Dongxing dared to behave so frivolously, Yue Hongchang would surely transform into a roaring lioness. But for her son, it was entirely different. The more wives, the better. Best if each had broad hips and could bear many grandsons and granddaughters for her. At this moment, Linghan found no opportunity to interject. Yue Hongchang seized complete initiative, tugging at Liu Yutong and the other two girls as she chatted endlessly. As though they were already one family bound by blood, Hu Nu felt unaccustomed to such an atmosphere and began eating once more, unconcerned that her prodigious appetite might startle this future mother-in-law. "Kanye, your path in martial arts does not lie by my side." Linghan beckoned Kanye over. "If you follow me, at best you will become an expert in time, but never a master of your generation." He paused briefly, then continued, "I hope you will become a grand master of the saber, the emperor among sabers." Kenyi's breathing immediately grew rapid. He had never imagined Linghan held such towering expectations for him. Without affectation, he dropped to one knee and said, "Master Han, I will absolutely not disappoint your expectations." Linghan nodded and said, "I will provide you with sufficient resources, but only enough to send you to the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier. The road beyond that, you must walk alone. Only the path you carve by yourself is the true martial way that belongs to you." "I understand," Kenyi nodded firmly. Linghan pondered briefly and said, "You may first head to Middle State. I will also go there, but not under the name of Linghan." Kenyi understood at once. All beneath the heavens knew Linghan had inherited the 12 palaces, legacy, and even knew the location of a god's treasure trove. If Linghan were to wander casually into Middle State under his true name, shattering Void Tier elites would immediately tear him into pieces. "I will still be called Han Lin. Take note of it, but do not inquire deliberately," Linghan added. "Yes." Kanye nodded repeatedly. Linghan tossed several spatial rings to Kanye, each filled with medicinal herbs and various materials taken from within the Black Tower. It required multiple spatial rings to contain them. One could imagine how vast the quantity truly was. Kanye showed no restraint. He stored his gratitude deep within his heart. If Linghan ever had need in the future, he would become Linghan's saber, cleaving through any foe that stood in his path. "Go." Linghan released Kanye from the Black Tower. The surging river waters naturally posed no threat to a spiritual pedestal tier warrior. The Black Tower drifted upon the waves, borne by the river's current, and after 10 days Linghan finally emerged from within. By then, he was already far from the territory of the Winter Moon sect. Having failed to locate him for so many days, those spiritual infant-tier cultivators had entirely lost his trail. Yet those individuals would very likely lie in ambush at Fallen Moon Gorge. The only passage that must be crossed to enter the desolate north. Spiritual infant-tier experts ambushing someone of the spiritual pedestal tier. Such a thing sounded laughable beyond measure. But Linghan possessed a god's skeletal remains that even spiritual infant tiers dared not approach. Thus they could only set up ambushes, not daring to give Linghan the opportunity to summon the god's corpse. Linghan inwardly shook his head. The two god corpses had not been preserved properly and had already been drained of their divine essence, so the oppressive might of the god tier was steadily fading. It likely would not be long before they became nothing more than ordinary bones. He did not care. Relying on God's bones to suppress others offered no benefit to his martial path, and if not for rescuing his mother this time, he would not have wished to use them at all. Within the Black Tower were abundant resources: king-tier beast meat, high-tier origin crystals, countless medicinal ingredients, and spiritual liquid. With all these combined, Linghan's cultivation advanced to the late stage of the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier within a dozen days, drawing ever closer to flower blossom tier. His brute force finally stepped into the spiritual pedestal tier as well, yet its rate of improvement began to slow. After all, it had caught up to his current realm, unlike before when it had surged forward explosively. Everyone else also experienced clear progress. Yu Hongchang, who had originally stood at the 3rd layer of the spiritual ocean tier, advanced to the 4th layer in roughly half a month. The benefits she gained within the Black Tower were evident beyond doubt. "In half a month, I can charge into Flower Blossom tier," Linghan murmured. "If those old bastards still dare to oppress me, I will once more draw upon the Black Tower's power enhancement to crush and slay them all, so they forever abandon such thoughts." Stepping into Flower Blossom tier meant he would finally take a true stride upon the martial path, casting off his mortal identity, gaining 200 additional years of lifespan, and soaring through the skies in flesh. Another day passed, and the magnificent fallen moon gorge unfolded before him. It was as though a divine saber had cleaved the earth apart, so wondrous that it could be deemed a marvel of heaven and earth. He strode forward without hesitation. He needed to visit the Star Brilliance Palace Hall, for he had once promised Long Yong Chang and the others that they might observe him refining Restore Spirit Pill. In the end, Liu Jitong had directly delivered the medicinal pill to Rain Country. Yet there were many medium-level Earth-grade medicinal pills he could refine, so he would simply change to another for demonstration. An attack tore through the air, swift as lightning and filled with killing intent. Linghan's instincts surpassed even his conscious thought, and he instantly entered the Black Tower. The strike was too terrifying, already at the spiritual infant tier, not to mention that he had no time to activate the Thunder Battle armor. Even if he had, it could not have withstood a heavy blow from a spiritual infant tier. The disparity was simply too vast. Hong, the ground where he had stood moments before, was blasted into a deep crater as a massive mushroom cloud rose into the heavens. The destructive force of a spiritual infant tier was unimaginably dreadful. This strike had clearly been aimed to take his life.